Okay, let's begin Tamid from the top, which is Chaf Amid Beis. You see in your Gemara, it's interesting. It doesn't start in Daf Beis. Also interesting, it starts on Amid Beis. Okay, let's leave all those interesting details for another time. But for now, let's dive right into the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, B'shleisha Mikaymais, in 3 places, HaKohanim Shoymrim B'Beis HaMikdash. The Kohanim guard the Bais HaMikdash. There's 3 locations of the Bais HaMikdash that the Kohanim watch and guard the Bais HaMikdash. What are the name of these 3 places? Bais HaTinas, place number 1. Bais HaNitzot, place number 2. Bais HaMoikad, place number 3. 3 different areas that the Kohanim are guarding the Bais HaMikdash, and we'll become very familiar with these 3 places, Bais HaTinas, Bais HaNitzot, Bais HaMoikad, as we learn through this first parak. So the Mishnah starts off by explaining to us the structure of these 3 places. Says the Mishnah, B'Beis HaTinos, B'Beis HaNitzos, those 2 places, Hayu Aliyos. There were Aliyos, they were second floors. They weren't built on the ground, they were second floors, and the Shomer would stand on this second floor, and that's what he would watch. Detail number 1. Who were the people that would be the watchmen? HaRoivim. Roivim is an interesting word. Roivim means the young Kohanim. Shoimrim Sham would watch over there. Bais HaMoikad, on the 3rd place, which is the Bais HaMoikad, was Kippah. It had a dome. It had a dome-like structure over the roof. It didn't have a regular roof. It had a dome. In a moment, we'll flip in the back of your Gemaras. Well, not all of you, or I'll show a picture, and you'll see exactly what's going on over here. Kippah, it had a dome like that. And number 2 was Ubayis Gadolaya. The Bais HaMoikad was a large house. Bayis Gadol, a large house. Number 3 about the Bais HaMikdash was a Mukaf Roivadim. It was surrounded, Mukaf, it was surrounded, Roivadim Shalavin, with rows of stone, and the Ziknei Beis Av, the elderly Beis Av, are the Kohanim that worked in the Bais HaMikdash. So the elderly Kohanim that worked in the Bais HaMikdash, Yeshenim Sham, would sleep there. What's there? In the Bais HaMikdash, that's the place, where on top of these rows of stone. Umaftecha is ha'azara biyadam. A maftech is a key, and the keys to the azara, the keys to open up the doors, were biyadam, were in their hands. What does it mean they're in their hands? Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean they were holding it. Maybe it means it was right next to them. Let's leave that for now. Pirchei Kahuna. What's Pirchei Kahuna? The young Kohanim. So the elderly Kohanim are sleeping where? On these rows of stone that surround the Bais HaMikdash. The Pirchei Kahuna, the young Kohanim, would sleep where? Ish kisesai ba'aretz. Each man with his clothing on the ground. And explains the Mishnah, Lo yahayu yeshenim b'bigdei kodesh. What clothing would they wear when they would sleep? They would not wear their big day kodesh. They would not wear their holy kohen clothing. Ella, rather, hayapaishtim. They would remove their kohen clothing. And they'd place that clothing underneath their head. Umiskasin biksus atzman. And they would cover themselves up with their mundane clothing. So they'd remove their kohen clothing, fold it up, put it under the head. It sounds like the kohen clothing was a pillow. They would actually sleep on top of it. We'll see that's not really true, because we know you're not supposed to sleep on top of clothing. Rather, it actually means next to their head. And then they would take their big day chol, their weekday, their mundane clothing. That's what they would use to cover themselves. So part A of the Mishnah is telling us 3 places that the Kohanim watch in the Bais HaMikdash. Now, number 1 is, what does it mean that they were shomer? What does it mean that they were watching? What are they watching for? Well, they're watching for some bad guys to come and loot the Bais HaMikdash. The Pashtus, what this means is there's nothing to do, covered, very good. Pashtus has nothing to do with a real watchman with a gun. The example that we like to give is that in the Vatican City, they have these cool guards over there, with the cool strimals and the funky colored clothing. What are these guys doing? They're not really guarding anything, let's be honest. I mean, the guy looks like he's dressed in a costume. And we're living in 2023. I'm sure there's security systems and everything. So why are they still standing there? It's a covet. It's there to show that, we're standing here watching this incredible place for them. So in the In our world, in the Bais HaMikdash, we have guards, we have shoymrim. It's there for kavod. 3 places: Bais HaTinas, Bais HaNitzas, Bais HaMikdash, and we split these 3 places into 2. Bais HaMikdash versus Bais HaTinas and Bais HaNitzas. Bais HaTinas and Bais HaNitzas were 2nd floors. Bais HaMikdash had a domed roof. It was large. The elderly kohanim are sleeping on rows of stone around the room, and the young kohanim are sleeping on the floor. That's part A of the Mishnah. The Mishnah continues. Now, we just spoke about them sleeping. So once we speak about them sleeping, says the Mishnah, what happens? Ira keri lechad mehem. What happens if one of the kohanim, they're sleeping, and they wake up, tamei. They wake up and they have a seminal emission, they have a wet dream, and they realize that they have keri. So they're tamei. There's a problem. They're in the Bais HaMikdash right now. What are they supposed to do? Some level Bais HaMikdash, not in the Bais HaMikdash. I mean, it's probably wise for a moment to just get a little bit. I mean, you can look up there on the wall on the other side of the Bais HaMikdash, you see the big picture, but you get a little bit of a familiarity with what we're talking about. For one moment, here, we'll just show this picture. This picture is a little bit of a 3D model over here. Over here, this is the Bais HaMikdash, this dome-like roof. So obviously, the Bais HaMikdash is actually over here, right? This is the entrance, and this is, the actual building. So we're more in the, the Azara, the larger structure. So this is the Bais HaMikdash over here. So the question is, the guy wakes up tamei, what does he do right now? So what he does right now is, says the Mishnah, Ira keri lechan mehem. What does he do? Yotzei. He leaves the Bais HaMikdash, v'hoylech loi, and he walks and he goes. Where does he go? On the top of Chavavam and Aleph, b'misiba. He goes through a tunnel. Where does this tunnel go? Ha'hoylechas, that goes loi tachas abira. Underneath the bira is the Bais HaMikdash. Underneath the Bais HaMikdash. And inside this tunnel, there are no lights. So what do they have there? V'neiros dolken mikan u'mikan. They have torches burning on either side. Ad, until shumagia, until he reaches lebeis hatvila, to the area in which he goes to the mikvah. Now, where is the Beis HaTvilah? Is a very large debated point. If we look at the map, look at the structure of the Bais HaMikdash, it's either right next door is a room, or it's a room across, whatever it is. The point is, he leaves the Bais HaMikdash, he goes underneath, and he goes into the Bais HaTvilah. Now, in this Bais HaTvilah, in this room that had a mikvah, what else was there? Says the Mishnah, Umadura hoisasham, and there was a fire over there. There was a fire over there near the place to go to the mikvah. Why is there a fire near the place to go to the mikvah? To warm himself up when he gets out of the mikvah, as we'll see in a moment. Ubeis hakisei shel kavod, and there was a bathroom of honor, literally. What does it mean, a beis hakisei shel kavod? Explains the Mishnah, Zeh hoya kavod. This was the kavod, this was the honor of the Beis HaMikdash. That what? Mitzai, no. The honor was it had a door. A novelty in those days. They didn't have bathrooms. So, what happens if you find the door closed? Matzai, no. You find the door closed. Yodeya, you know. Sheisham adam. There's obviously someone inside. Patuach, if you find the door open, then biyadua she'in sham adam. So the kavod of the bathroom inside this mikvah area of the Beis HaMikdash was that they had a door. So you're never going to walk in on someone trying to use the bathroom. Yorad, so he's in the room with the mikvah. Yorad, so what would he do? He would go down. So Yorad, what would he do? He would go down. What does it mean he would go down? He would go into the mikvah v'tavel, and he would tayvel. Allah, he would come up out of the mikvah. What do you do after you come out of the mikvah? Says the Mishnah, play by play. Vinistapeg, you got to dry yourself off. Vinistapeg, vinischamim, and then you would warm yourself up. Keneged hamedura, opposite the fire. So again, he goes down, he's toivel, he comes up, dries himself off, and then he warms himself up. And then, what does he do next? He goes back to the Bais HaMikdash. He goes back to where he was sleeping. He goes back and he sits with the rest of the brothers who were kohanim until the gates would open, and then yatsa v'halach loy. Then he would leave the Bais HaMikdash, because he can't be in the Bais HaMikdash. Why not? He went to the mikvah already. Isn't he tahar? The answer is no. He's not tahar. Why is he not tahar? And remember, Tavol Yoim, he has to wait for Harav Shemesh. He has to wait for the sun to set. Very good. So what happens is he went to the mikvah, but he can't do anything. But so why doesn't he leave right then? Why doesn't he leave? It's the middle of the night. Why doesn't he leave? Simple reason is because the gates were locked. He can't leave. The Bais HaMikdash is a locked area, so he can't leave. That's reason number one. Reason number two is because of a bizayon. Imagine in the middle of the night, he just disappears. Everyone's going to know what happened. So rather, he comes back, he stays in the Bais HaMikdash until in this in-between status, and then once the doors open up in the morning, then he leaves and he goes back home. Okay, now we wrap up the Mishnah. So that's part B of the Mishnah, is what happens if a kohen wakes up and he is tamei. Part C, part 3 of the Mishnah is Mishu Roitza Litzroim Es HaMizbeach. One who wants, Litzroim literally means to do the truma. What is truma? Truma means separation. One who wants to perform the separation of the Mizbeach. This is referring to the terumas hadeshen. This is referring to the cleaning out of the ashes of the Bais HaMikdash, which, as we'll see, is the first process done in the morning in the Bais HaMikdash. You got to clean up before you start the day anew. So one who wants to be tayrim the Bais HaMikdash, the Mizbeach, one who wants to do the terumas hadeshen and clear out the ash, what would he do? Mashkim, he would wake up early. V'toivel, and he would go to the mikvah. Ad shalayavai ha'memayna, before the memayna comes. Who is the memayna? We'll see the memayna is the kohen that was in charge of the payasais, that was in charge of the lotteries, that was in charge of giving out who's going to be the one to perform the terumas hadeshen, etc. So he gets up early, he goes to the mikvah. Says the Mishnah, this guy, the memayna, who's coming to do the lottery, what time would he come in the morning? Says the Mishnah, Loi kol ha'itim shavos. Not all times are equal. Pa'amim, there are times, shubam mikreis hagever. There were times when he would come at a time called kreis hagever, when the rooster crows. Or close to it, a little bit before, a little bit afterwards. There was not one precise time that the memayna would come. Ha-memayna ba, what would happen early in the morning? The memayna, the kohen in charge of the payasais, would come, v'dafak aleihem. And what would he do? He would knock on the doors of the Bais HaMikdash. The kohanim inside would hear that he is knocking. V'hein paschu lai, and they would open up the gate for him. Amar lohen, and he would tell the kohanim, mi shetaval, whoever went to the mikvah, meaning in order to do the terumas hadeshen, yavai, let him come, v'yapis, and be involved in the payis, and be involved in the lottery. Hefisu, they would do the lottery. Misha zacha, whichever kohen won the lottery, zacha boy, he won, and he will be able to do the incredible job of the terumas hadeshen, of the cleaning out the ashes. So we conclude that this Mishnah, as we said, really has 3 parts. Part A of the Mishnah detailed the places that the Kohanim are shomer in the Bais HaMikdash. Bais Haftinas, Bais Hanitzos, Bais HaMikdash. We learned the differences between these places. Bais Haftinas, Bais Hanitzos were 2-floored areas. Bais HaMikdash was a domed area, which was large, which had rows around it that the elderly Kohanim slept on, and the younger, with keys in their hands, and the younger Kohanim slept on the floors, not in their big day kodesh, not in their holy clothing, rather in their mundane clothing. We moved on to part B of the Mishnah, which detailed what happens if a kohen is tamei. He wakes up and he saw carry, he leaves, he goes into a tunnel, he goes to the Bais HaTfilah. The tunnel had torches burning on either side. There was a bathroom in the Bais HaTfilah. There was a fire in the Bais HaTfilah. If the door was open to the bathroom, he knew no one was there. If not, he knew someone was there. He would taivel, dry off, warm himself up, and then go back to the Bais HaMikdash till the morning, and then when the gates opened, he would leave. And finally, part C of the Mishnah detailed how we begin the morning, which is the terumas hadeshen, the removal of the ashes. Whichever kohen wanted to be involved, he would get up early and go to the mikvah. When the memayna, who was the kohen in charge of doing the payasais, would come, he would knock on the door, they'd open up for him, he'd say, who went to the mikvah? They would come, he would perform the lottery, and the one who won would do the terumas hadeshen, and we'll continue from the Gemara next year.